Hello, everyone out there. Hi. Welcome to the Musical QuaranStream with Glen and Bri. I am Glen.
I'm Bri.
And this is the show that we do twice a week, where we come to the internet and we say, hey, let's sit down for about 45 minutes to an hour and talk about musicals and theater and art in general and how things are going all around us. And Bri sometimes adjusts the camera to get me more in frame.
Yes. He doesn't like me very much. That's why he's so far away.
What? Oh, come on.
There
She
we
knows
go.
that's not true.
There we go. Well, today Glenn has a pitch.
Yes, today I will be pitching for my part of the show. We pitch a show. One of us pitches a show at the end of every episode. But to begin with, we usually talk a little bit about, like, what have we been watching, what have we been experiencing. For starters, if you're familiar with our YouTube channel, The Film Optimist, where we post the archives of this, we had a new video this week.
Yeah.
So
He's the film optimist.
yes, I am the Film Optimist, and the Film Optimist channel is also the home of the Musical QuaranStream archives.
Yep.
Yes.
Even though he is at Doctor Who and not at the Film Optimist,
Yes.
he is the Film Optimist.
Yes, this branding right here has been with me a very, very long time. But anyway, I posted a video up that's all about Alan Funt and the first candid camera film, known either by the titles A Very Candid Camera or the original title, What Do You Say to a Naked Lady? So, and the Film Optimist video is about, that's an interesting movie that actually raises a lot of very good questions about society and things like that, and taking sort of a serious examination about things that are said in the movie. And so you can tell that that's something that I've been watching lately.
I feel like when you put this video on YouTube, you should be like, insert clip here.
Yes.
So insert clip here, so then he'll have to put a clip so that you can check out the Film Optimist and click through on our YouTube
Yes,
channel.
well, I could do that little thing they let you do on YouTube now, where, like, it'll be up in that corner. You'll be able to, like, click a link up
Click
in
his
that corner
face.
and watch it.
If you click his face, you'll get a little clip of the Film Optimist.
Click right here, and you will be able to see the Film Optimist. Anyway, so there's that, and we just started watching, like, just last night, The Queens of Mystery on Acorn TV.
Which is fun.
Yes.
Reminds us a lot of Pushing Daisies.
Yeah, it's got that same sort of, like, storybook style narration combined with kind of the funny characters in very serious stories kind of thing.
Yeah. It's really hard. I was saying, I think that for Amazon, they really need to consider splitting the murder mystery element into, do you want very serious, like, you know,
Yes.
Wallander and, you know, the girl with the dragon tattoo type of serious murder mystery, or do you want something a little bit, like, more lighthearted and fun, which I would kind of say, like, Agatha Christie and Psych and Monk and all of that stuff.
It's one of those things you need the difference between, oh my, we are all at this country home and one of us has been murdered. Good thing there's a mystery writer here to solve the murder. And then you need the other side, which is police walking around about, we found the other half of that body.
Yeah. And Lola is right in front of my face, even though you can't see her.
Yes, she's just off camera. She likes to do that. She likes to be just off camera. So we have that. And
Kind of on camera. She's on my shoulder.
Yes.
She's a little parrot.
Yes. And there she
we go.
goes. All right. But so we have that we've been watching. And
Same old, same old. We
Yeah.
watched, you know, Muppets Now and
Yeah.
Muppet History.
yes.
You know, it's kind of, I think we're getting into a routine now, which is good. I'm really excited that Labor Day has come up. We get a little 3-day weekend. I'm probably going to catch up a little bit on work. Oh, I hate to do that, but if I don't check my emails, I won't do it, but I'll have to check it so I can be
Yes.
prepared on Tuesday. It's just, it gets out of hand. It really easily does. Like, that's the one thing I said. Being a psychology and theater major, I never thought I would spend 90% of my waking life in front of a screen.
Yeah.
I like people, so I miss people. And there's Lola in the background.
Yes.
I like cats as well, but, you know.
Well, and speaking of liking people and theater and everything like that, you did show me that video on YouTube.
Yeah.
Of the Michigan.
Yeah, University of Michigan has, like, I guess a senior video, and like I told Glenn, I said, I don't know of what this genre is. I first kind of got introduced to it for med schools. So med school seniors will welcome the med school freshmen by doing a parody of a popular song or a musical song or something, and kind of do like a little pep rally about rah rah, we're the best, like we're the best class, we're the best school. And then I saw University of Michigan BFA in musical theater did one, and they apparently have been doing it for decades. They've been doing it for a long time. I don't know why a lot of other schools don't do this. Like, Glenn had a really good theory that, you know, the difference between a BA and a BFA means that there's a little bit more flexibility and, like, you know, oh, yeah, this is your major, but it's not your whole life. Whereas, like, a BFA is a more, I guess, like, a professional program in the way, like, a med school would be. And so I think, like, when you know that this is your cohort for 4 years... it makes a little bit more sense, but I said I wish I would have been able to do stuff like this in undergrad, but...
Yeah, it was very
fun. I was kind of a dork in undergrad. So.
It was basically a long musical parody with lots of snippets of popular musicals being parodied, where all of the seniors at the University of Michigan and the BFA for musical theater sing and dance about what it's like being a student at the University of Michigan, and all about their professors and their classes, and hey, freshmen, here are our nicknames, so you can come up and talk to us about these things, and sort of thing. And it's very fun. It was a very fun sort of like, oh, that's a neat kind of community thing.
Well, I made Glenn watch it because, one, they kind of said, hey, this is different. Normally they do a show in the very beginning, so they didn't have to structure a video or anything like that. So this year they did because of coronavirus. Yeah. But they also said, because they really believe in, like, the Black Lives Matter movement, that any views and they would turn on the monetization element so that if you went to YouTube and watched it, they could get money to donate to Black Lives Matter organizations, I guess in Michigan. I don't know if specifically in Ann Arbor or Michigan or whatever, but I just figured, I was like, that's worth 2 views, one from me and one from Glenn.
Yes. So that was an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, I mean, I really, really like stuff like that. I always really liked the medical school ones. I would watch that all the time when I was, like, advising medical school entrance exams and stuff like that.
Yeah, she would come home and be like, hey, you have to see these 3 medical school entrance videos.
Yeah, I just really love that element of creativity. And then we were kind of talking about, like, oh, yeah, but when we were in undergrad, like, there's a reason why we had a BA, not a BFA. Like, as much as we love theater, obviously we're spending a lot of time on the QuaranStream doing theater. We also liked a lot of other stuff, and sometimes it's a bit harder when you're, 14, 15, even if you do school theater and school musicals and stuff like that. Like, it's a big decision to make to say, oh, I'm going to go on auditions and go to these MFA programs. And I think, like, I kind of fully anticipated I would do a, physical science. Yeah. Going into undergrad, and then, like, maybe, like, a theater minor, and ended up doing a social science with a theater major, so. Yeah,
and we were talking about that, and I said, when I first showed up at college, I totally expected that I was going to be an English major and go through the whole PhD or MFA thing and wind up as an English professor, and maybe do theater on the side, and then I wound up really falling in love with the theater department and being a part of that art form.
So as much as, like, we really love, those professional programs and wish we could have been a part of it, I think it was hard for us to make that decision at 17, 18 and say, oh yeah, we're going to do these auditions and do that and do this. And I don't know, it's tough. You only got one life. It's really hard to know whether you're making the right decisions or not. You just have to kind of keep moving forward and hoping it's okay.
Yeah,
that's some advice to all you youngins out there looking at going to college.
I'm still holding out hope, though, that future that 1950s science fiction imagined can happen in my lifetime.
Well, I'm also, like, I keep poking you to contact the MFA program locally
Yeah.
as well, because he's like, I want to do more theater, and I'm like, well,
MFA program
I think
right down the street.
I think that's what you need to do.
So that's sort of like been our experience with finding new shows and the arts. We talked a little bit about, we haven't watched it, but we talked a little bit about the sort of controversies around Disney and their release of the Mulan live-action movie.
Yeah, I don't know if we will watch it before December, to be honest.
Right.
I mean, like, I think things are definitely a lot better. Like, I had some good news. Like, the month I was furloughed, they're now kind of trying to reimburse everybody from now until the end of the year, provided that the hospital doesn't shut down again. So, so that was a little bit of good news. But, like, I promptly took my little bit of extra bonus money and bought a Costco membership. So I don't know if we're going to necessarily do any of the things like Mulan or Bill and Ted or anything like that, but maybe see them for free when they come on other services that we're already paying for. But, you know, I mean, I can't blame anybody who really wants to pay for it and to see it. Like, I mean, I'm sure it's a good movie, but I think the bigger controversy issue that we talked about having an issue with is the Hong Kong situation is really complicated. And while a lot of people are saying, like, oh, yeah, people shouldn't be protesting to stay with their colonizer and, you know, and all this other stuff, but people are definitely saying that there's an element of freedom and economic growth and stability that they had under British rule that they really wanted to enjoy, and China kind of said, sure, in the beginning, and now it's going to be completely taken over by Chinese rule, which is really changing, like, a lot of people who are in their mid-20s, who has never really lived in China or experienced that, and now are being kind of forced into a new living arrangement, like, really dramatically. And so there has been these protests going on for like 2 years. Like, it's a really long time, and a lot of people have been very badly hurt and killed. And so while I certainly understand why Chinese actors might be siding with the Chinese government, I do feel like it does become a bit problematic, where I feel like you're not really honoring, like, the freedom and choice of other people and the people who lost their lives or who have gotten really badly injured, because I feel like young people at this time are really trying to fight and stand up for things that they really believe in, and I feel like I really believe in those things as well, despite being, you know, somebody twice their age in many cases. But I feel like there is going to be a time where these older policies and stuff can't really be managed by the people who still are putting them in charge right now, and it would be really kind of great if we could listen to the younger generations and kind of be more conscientious as a collective about honoring freedom and choice and stuff like that. And so I think that it's really, really hard, because I was like, I'm not in, like, I'm gonna be honest, I have some privilege, I have a little bit of power, I'm definitely gonna vote to, you know, make my voice known, but I do feel like we're heading towards a really big issue. A lot of, like, my students, we would talk about how, you know, I'm middle-aged at this point, you know, for all intents and purposes. My parents are in the boomer generation, you know, so they're much older. But, you know, if you think of everybody who's 40 plus, a lot of us might have chronic health conditions. A lot of us might have a lot of issues that are really going to kind of put a burden on our society. And so it is kind of the 20 to 25-year-olds who are going to be stuck with it. And there's not nearly as many of them as there are of us. And I think that, you know, that's why I'm a little bit more inclined to want to be progressive on a lot of issues, because I want their lives to be kind of easy lives taking care of the rest of us, you know. I mean, in 20 years, I'm going to be where my parents are, you know. So I feel like I already see how hard that is, and I feel like as bad as things are now during coronavirus with the economy, it's going to get worse. And we need to change a lot in order to start new American industries, to really kind of change some more policies so that they're more focused on kind of social issues that will protect people. And I think the more we work towards, like, an equitable and just society, I think that that's going to be really helpful. And I think that's why I really appreciate, you know, the protesters in Hong Kong and the protesters here for Black Lives Matter, because I think it is all really important. And I think, like, you know, unfortunately, it might take a long time to change, but a change is coming.
And I think that there's a thing there to be said as well that we are in middle age, essentially. And we were talking earlier this week, the two of us were talking earlier this week about when we went through theater classes, we were kind of in this weird space.
Yeah.
Pretty much everywhere that we worked in theater when we were younger, everything was transitioning, and people were still trying to figure out what the future of theater was.
Yeah, I think that we kind of are mentioning a lot of more things we feel like we missed out on, but I don't think that we had a bad experience or bad education.
No.
But one of the things that I kind of mentioned, graduating at the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And then going to grad school kind of in the 2010s.
Yeah.
It was a really weird experience to all of a sudden hear viewpoints come up.
Yeah.
And I was just like, viewpoint, I didn't learn anything about viewpoints in undergrad. And so it really took a lot of education of a lot of things that changed very quickly in that decade about what theater can be, how accessible theater can be, the types of theater you can do, the things that were kind of being named and created, where it's we might have always been doing that, but we were kind of at a position, I think, in the late 90s, early 2000s, where we still had a lot of things coming from in the 70s we did this.
Yeah.
And I think that was all important for our social justice work. But I do think it misled us a little bit. We'll just move to New York and take over a warehouse.
Yeah. That's a big part of it. And also things I know that I in particular seem to have hit a lot of theater departments that were in transition because my undergraduate work, there was a lot of stuff going on there with, we don't do program biographies anymore, and we don't do this or that. And I always say, and this is, whenever I say this, I sound like a very bitter actor being like, but where's my credit? But the fact of the matter is that every time I've been back to the school where I did undergraduate, they always have the photographs up on the wall of what our theater department does and the history of our theater department. And there is a 5-year gap in the photos.
When we went there.
Yeah, it is literally
it's true.
The year before I showed up. You don't see any photos for that year through the year I graduated.
Yeah.
So starting, and then one photo from one production the year after I graduated. And then it picks up again with, here's our illustrious history. So it does at times feel a little bit like the 5 years of theater around when I went to that school are the years we don't like to talk about. Those are the dark years for the theater department. And then the school where I went and got my MA and worked with the theater department, I got there right as they made the decision to stop doing biographies in their programs. To stop doing headshots of their students hanging on the walls, to stop doing this or that or the other. And then the year after I left was the year that they started doing intensive dance training and physical training for actors and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's where it kind of started. Is I was talking about how it seemed like all the Michigan kids had to take a ballet class, which I loved ballet. That was one of my favorite forms of dance, in high school. And we had a movement class that you could take, but it was optional. So, there wasn't really, this firm thing. And I think that was another thing we're talking about, the difference between a BA and a BFA, is we were kind of people who get a BA in theater can do almost anything with it, including performance. Yeah. But it's not a strictly, we're going to teach you how to audition, we're going to put you in touch with, industry contacts. It was very... not that wasn't possible, but you really had to work very, very hard to kind of figure that out and to make those connections and tell your advisors you wanted that.
Yeah.
And if you really weren't sure, or if you're just maybe I'll teach, or maybe I'll write books, or maybe I'll start a theater company.
Or if your advisor disagreed with you about wanting to go into that field.
You would kind of have a little bit of a harder time. And I think that was the one thing, I said, for me, the thing is I was really good at in high school was I won visual art competitions. I took AP art. I took all the AP sciences. I particularly AP chemistry, AP physics. And so I thought for sure I'd be majoring in chemistry or physics, and I would maybe do something a minor in art. So I felt I had a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
Because, like, I was very focused on, like, you know, like, Watson and Crick, like, really found, like, knowing art was important to discover the double helix. Well, this was back in the 90s, so, you know,
Yeah.
we didn't know, you know, Rosalind Franklin or anything. But,
Right.
but anyway, so I was really kind of, like, enamored with, like, cloning and genetics and all that stuff, and so I didn't really foresee theater as, like, a big thing, and so kind of going to a school where, like, that BFA wasn't really kind of mentioned, and then staying with my physical science major for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was really hard as well, because then kind of coming into stuff, like, I didn't really have a great shift at then being able to say, like, oh, well, I want to learn how to audition, or I'd like to learn how to, you know, go get my MFA or something, because I felt like I didn't even know what I wanted to do, because I didn't even figure out I didn't want my major until I was, like, 20.
Yeah. So, basically, we have had the great fortune or misfortune, depending on how you look at it,
of liking a lot of things.
to live in interesting times.
Yeah.
So,
well, and this is my thing. It's like, I know everybody's really struggling, and I'm not trying to pass any judgment, and I apologize in advance if it sounds judgy, but on the one hand, like, everything is a struggle and everything is a mess, and I kind of want to reassure everybody it kind of always is, all the time, always, even when you're there.
Yeah.
But also, like, you know, I'd like to just say, like, whatever choices you're making, like, they can't be easy. It has to be a challenge, and I know families and individuals are really struggling right now. But also, like, if you're doing great, like, I kind of talked about with you personally where I think I would have done better in online classes in many cases, because as a little kid, I was always, like, obsessed with drawing, and so I'd get kicked out of class, like, almost all the time drawing when I should be working on other work. But I'd be like, oh, man, if I'm on a Zoom class, I could be drawing down here. No one would know. They'd think I'm taking notes. It'd be great. I could go back and rewatch my Zoom session. You know, I mean, like, if you're doing well, don't feel guilty either. You know, if you're struggling, don't feel guilty. If you're doing well, don't feel guilty. Everybody's different. Everybody goes throughout their own struggles. And, like, I really, really believe that, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. And, like, really great things are going to come out of this. And, you know, even if they don't, like, that's okay too. Like, I mean, I just feel like everybody is feeling like this has to mean something aside from it's just living.
Yeah.
And it is just living. Like, you know, I feel like there was no better time before now. And I don't know if there's going to be a better time after now, but I hope so. I'm pretty optimistic.
Yeah. So, that's our discussion of the world today and the entertainment we've been enjoying.
And Lola agrees.
And Lola agrees with all of this. Lola is now sitting between us and the monitor. She is still off camera. She has not mastered this whole taking over the stream concept yet.
But she's in a sunbeam, and if you know anything about cats and sunbeams, ideal.
Yeah. And she's got both humans talking at least in her direction. Yeah. So she's very happy. She's about as happy as a cat can be right now.
Well, I think we've done our prerequisite talk about the world speech.
Yes. So,
what I will say is if you are interested in sharing anything that you're watching or doing, especially if it's theater, musical theater related, you know, maybe something similar to the University of Michigan thing, or maybe what your Zoom theater reading or piece is, like, you can tweet at us. We'd love to watch it. We're always looking for good things.
Right there at the bottom underneath our faces, you can see there's Bri's Twitter handle. There's my Twitter handle. And, of course, you could always stop by our Ko-Fi down there and, like, buy us a coffee if you feel like it.
That's kind of the one thing that now, going back to work for 2 weeks, I was never a heavy coffee drinker, as you know, and now I'm pretty addicted.
Yes.
Mainly because days have been pretty long.
Yes, and I made her a cup of Dalgona coffee this morning.
Good.
So
I can see the hype.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about the pitch today.
Yeah.
Which is my pitch, so I'm very excited for this. So we've been doing classical literature. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been the thing, is we've done book adaptations before. We did young adult book adaptations and everything. But this was specifically like 2 weeks of classical literature pitches.
Yeah, I think we just kind of wanted to be able to talk about a lot of different forms of inspiration. Yeah. I feel like there's definitely a lot of pedagogy of what makes a good adaptation and what doesn't. Mm-hmm. I certainly know a lot of my friends who are playwrights who focus on adaptation, and they definitely have their own styles and come from different schools of thought on it. But I do feel like even if you take inspiration from a loose adaptation, that's still just as strong as kind of following word for word in a book. And also why you might make those choices. But I feel like that's really what we've been trying to do with this pitch segment, is not only to be like, here's some great ideas out into the world, and like maybe when we can start creating theater together, these are going to be some good ideas to move forward with, but also not everything has to come from a traditional book. It can come from a magazine article, it can come from a newspaper piece, it can come from a YouTube channel, it can come from your favorite podcast, it can come from a song. I mean, we want to kind of highlight everything that was out there.
Yeah, and with diving into classical literature a bit, we wanted to look at things that, classical literature, of course, gets a lot of play in musical theater, in large part because it's public domain. Nobody is owed any royalties if you decide to write a musical based on it. But we wanted to look at areas of classical literature that maybe don't typically get a lot of attention. So that led to Kate Chopin, or Kate Chopin, or...
however you pronounce it, you should tweet at us if we're saying it wrong. We would love the education.
It led to John Kendrick Bangs, and it led to Shakespeare, which Shakespeare gets a lot of adaptation, but more realistically speaking, you were talking about musical adaptation of dramatic Shakespeare
and heavy metal,
which tends to get thrown over in favor of comedic adaptation of Shakespeare. So today I'm going to bring up an author who I think has a lot of very rich area to mine. I'm outlining a script for a musical based on one of his stories. I wanted to talk about Algernon Blackwood. And Algernon Blackwood, I think I said this the last stream when we said we were going to be doing this today, just has one of the most fun names to say in literature. It is hard to come up with a more fun name to say than Algernon Blackwood. It sounds very, very British author, doesn't it?
It sounds like if you're on the Scottish moors, and there just happened to be this old castle, right?
Yes.
And then we haven't seen anybody coming or going, but we're really convinced that this guy has been there for 250 years because he's a British vampire lord.
Yes, Algernon Blackwood. Yes, you can see that. Or it sounds like the character who would be among the suspects in an Agatha Christie novel, like Lord Algernon Blackwood.
Or at the very lowest brow of it, maybe that guy that hangs out in that really niche coffee shop.
Yes.
And his real name isn't that, but he has adopted that because that's his soul.
Jim Smith moved to Williamsburg and became Algernon Blackwood. Yes. So let's talk a little bit about who Algernon Blackwood is. He is a writer from the British Isles. He was basically not contemporary to. He was basically the generation before H.P. Lovecraft, which H.P. Lovecraft has become the big early horror author to be adapted in recent years, especially since people found out that actually nobody really owned the copyright on H.P. Lovecraft anymore, so you could do whatever you wanted, when for years a publisher had been claiming the copyright on him. So Algernon Blackwood is actually listed by Lovecraft as one of his influences. He was very influential on an entire generation of writers. J.R.R. Tolkien, for instance, credited Algernon Blackwood's work with providing him with a lot of the sort of heightened English phrases that he liked to use in his books, like the crack of doom.
When you were telling me about this, I was like, this is all those guys that were on that rugby team, right?
Yes, basically, yeah. And Blackwood was, like I say, he was a writer from the British Isles who focused on weird fiction and ghost stories.
Which are good things to focus on.
Yes.
As an example, we've loved the YouTube series Monstrum.
Mm-hmm.
I was I still really like it. And I work with I feel so bad. She has to be the representative for the whole island, of Northern Ireland, right?
Mm-hmm.
I work with this lady from Northern Ireland, and we watched the one on Banshees, and I was just like, your name has a Mac in it. You're going to be in trouble. But she's very patient. She wouldn't be a nurse if she wasn't.
No. But so Algernon Blackwood is, if H.P. Lovecraft is thought of as being the father of modern horror, Algernon Blackwood arguably is the grandfather. And he did a wide array of stories. He did things like The Wendigo, which was one of the first popular literature adaptations of the Wendigo myth in print. He did The Maid's Ghosts story. He did just a broad array. He did the Minotaur, the Centaur. He would mine folklore and mythology and pull these things into what for him was the modern day and turn them into these very suspenseful thriller yarns. And he has the added advantage when you're talking about Lovecraft as a popular voice to adapt, that Lovecraft is overtly racist. People try to write off Lovecraft as being a product of his times, but the fact of the matter is that you can find multiple instances of his colleagues, his contemporaries, like writing letters to him and being like, hey, you need to chill out. Non-white people are not as bad as you think they are. So it's hard to really say product of his times when even people in his times were going, you're kind of being a racist. And Blackwood, yes, still has some material where it's like, it's a little bit misogynistic, it's a little bit racist, but it is much more in line with he genuinely was a product of his times. As unfortunate as it was, and as not right as it made those points of view, it was still, he was in step with the contemporary morals of the time.
Well, we just watched a monstrum on The Legend of Spring-Heeled Jack, and they were talking about, like, just because you were poor and or a woman, like, you didn't hold a lot of standing in British society,
right,
and therefore you were not meant to be believed. And so when this guy was, hurting, like, lower-class working women, nobody took him seriously, and then when all of a sudden it started hurting aristocratic women, they're like,
maybe we should pay attention to this now.
Yeah, so kind of not all that different from right now.
Yeah, so these are all unfortunate things about Blackwood and his writing. However, what that means is that when you are adapting H.P. Lovecraft, you have to work very hard to dig out the inherent racism and misogyny in Lovecraft and be like, it may actually be that this entire theme for this short story genuinely was foreigners are scary. How can we make that story modern in such a way that it doesn't maintain that theme? With Algernon Blackwood, there's a lot of stories you can dig into where you can remove the bad parts, update to a modern sensibility, and you're not completely rewriting the story as written. That's an advantage. And I keep bringing up Lovecraft because, like I said, Lovecraft is very popular for adaptation now. And Blackwood, I feel, culturally, is at a point now where Lovecraft was when I was a teenager in the 90s. There's a very small group of people who are very, very familiar with Algernon Blackwood's work. Sort of a fringe around that, people who have heard the name, maybe read a story or something like that, or they've heard Neil Gaiman mention Algernon Blackwood once or twice. And then he's largely unknown outside of that. And people don't really pay attention to those stories, people don't really reread those stories, but now is a very good time to revisit those stories and start looking at them and saying, what is here that still talks to us today? And like I said, I'm working on outlining a musical based on an Algernon Blackwood story. But I wanted to bring up one of his stories in particular that I think would be a very good, musical theater piece. And I am going to stand up for just a second because my leg was starting to hurt the way I was sitting on that chair.
No.
All right. So,
show must go on.
Yes, the show must go on. So, the story that I will be talking about today is called Jimbo, a Fantasy. And this is a story that basically is a young boy has a governess that he's very fond of, sort of a live-in nanny / teacher, basically. And then he has an accident, he falls down and basically falls into a coma. And the teacher grows very depressed that the family won't let her see him. But the entire time that he is in recovery for the coma, we are given the story of him essentially being trapped inside his own mind. Which is
terrifying.
It's terrifying, but it is presented to us as him being trapped in a tower. And it sort of dives into, like I said, Blackwood liked to mine mythology and folklore. The longer the story goes on, the more Jimbo's story inside his mind comes to resemble the story of Icarus being locked in a tower. To the point that eventually the governess appears in the tower as well, giving him a pair of wings and starting to teach him how to fly so that he can escape from it. And I love sort of the poetry of this imagery. And I feel like it has great opportunity. For one thing, it has great opportunity as a framing device. That I could see taking this story, which is largely about being trapped in the tower. And there's a large booming voice that yells at him every time he tries to escape the tower, sort of thing. But taking this story and expanding it out and creating sort of this Alice in Wonderland quality to the story. Of little vignettes, which could be based on other works from Blackwood, with Jimbo having to meet all of these characters and everything. And one of the things this is one of the few times we've ever actually discussed our pitch with each other before the stream.
Yes, because I was making pancakes.
Yes.
And I said he had to entertain me as I cooked pancakes.
Yes. So she said, "What's your pitch today?" And I told her my pitch. Here's the thing that I think makes this very attractive, is we've talked before about trying to find roles for children in theater that are not the traditional roles for children in the theater. And I feel like Jimbo presents that possibility, that essentially what you can have is a weird / dark fantasy story with an 8 or 9-year-old boy right at the middle of it. Or you could rewrite it and have it be an 8 or 9-year-old girl right at the middle of it. So you can create this story, which is a young person having to deal with a very serious situation, having to deal with very dark and scary imagery and sort of thing, as part of a musical theater experience. And I feel like that would give an opportunity to actors who say, we're not that fond of Annie. Or actors who maybe would not ordinarily be cast in Annie, that sort of thing. And I feel like that would give us a space to sort of explore children on stage in the musical theater that is not, oh, look at the cute little ragamuffin singing a nice song.
I could also see, like, if you had kind of a problem with, like, children actor contracts and time and stuff like that, that if you did even want to age it up to, like, 18, you could probably do that just fine and have, like how The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime was kind of aged up like that.
Yeah.
Or Evan Hansen, was kind of aged up a lot. For some reason, when you were giving the description, I just immediately, my brain went to The Who's Tommy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And just because you're like, he's in a coma and he's trapped in a tower, and I'm like, ever since I was a young man, I played the silver ball.
Yeah, well, it was a very popular theme for a while there in rock opera. And I think the concept of being trapped in your own mind is like a long-standing storyline, particularly in 20th century work. You see that a lot.
And I think it, like, relates a lot to, like, how we've been all feeling during quarantine.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you know, we do have a certain amount of freedom, but, like, at the same time, like, the thing that's been really weird for me, and I'm sure it has been really weird for all of our essential personnel and all of our teachers, where it's like, I can't believe I'm allowed out every single day to go to work, but, like, we don't have a cure. We still have the same high rate of transmission. Like, it's just now I'm wearing a mask at my desk every single day.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, March, we all went home.
Yeah.
And that's the weird thing to me, is, like, you just feel like you just have this really walking through space vibe about the time we're living in now. So I'm sure having that aspect of, you know, the true freedom is within your mind, where you can have wings and be set free.
Right.
It's something we're all kind of experiencing during coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, it does basically make it a story of our times, doesn't it? So I think it is, it's a story that I think has a lot of opportunity for expansion. I think if you tried to do a straight adaptation of it without expanding the story at all, then probably you would wind up with a one-act musical. But having that room in there for expansion and reinterpretation, I feel you could build a very wonderful theatrical experience that could also be built around very little spectacle on stage, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. You could create a wonderful musical experience for community theaters to be able to put on.
Well, or I feel like it almost is expanding or contracting, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like you could do kind of something very similar to Neil Gaiman's Wolves on the Walls, which was recently done by National Theater, or you could do something that was done at art with The Light Princess.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like with a fairy tale quality, it can legitimately be, you know, here's some cardboard wings, or it really could be very dramatic and very grand, almost the same way you see a lot of community theaters and professional theaters play around with Angels in America.
Yeah. Well, looking into new plays that are available, and some libraries that publishers are revamping for more like Zoom readings and sort of things, I discovered, for instance, that there's an adaptation of Peter Pan out there that was written by John Jory. And you can find and license John Jory's script for Peter Pan in either full adaptation or non-flying adaptation. He has a version of the script that he specifically wrote for theaters that cannot do the rigging to fly characters. So I could see that even being something done with this show, would be creating, like you said, the cardboard wings or something bigger. We can create a version of this show that is available to theaters that have the fly space and have the hardware and everything necessary to rig an actor to fly. Or we have a version of this where you never have to see the characters actually fly.
Yeah, very cool.
All right. And, of course, having said that, I focused on that one story. I think that one story would make a great play. There's tons of material out there by Algernon Blackwood, and it's all in the public domain. You can go to Project Gutenberg at gutenberg.org, search for Algernon Blackwood, and get all of his stories for free.
Yeah, did we do that on purpose? Because Kate Chopin was free. Mm-hmm. Shakespeare's pretty much free.
Yeah.
And then this
John
is free.
Kenrick Bangs is free.
So we're giving you a lot of, like, good public domain pieces here. So even if you don't like our ideas, like, feel free to go check out all these free works that are out in the public domain, create your own piece, and let us know about it. We'd love for you to tweet at us.
I think that when we were first talking about this, we set this schedule months ago. So it can be difficult at times for us to remember why we came up with this particular theme and these particular things. But I think when we came up with let's talk about classical literature, we were trying to say, it's so frequent that we see, here's the new adaptation of Dracula, or here's the new adaptation of Frankenstein, or this or that classical book that is very popular to adapt. And we were like, we want to encourage people to look for things that are a little bit off the beaten path for a theatrical adaptation.
Yeah, and I think we are looking at things of, let's just be honest, there has not been a lot of support for a lot of different industries out there, especially the arts, which, the National Academy for the Arts every single year posts how much the arts bring to the economies, not only of each state, but also of each city, like a large city in the state, and then kind of nationally. And so, like, they really do a lot of work showing that, whereas a lot of people, I feel, say, oh, well, the arts are superfluous and they're not. I don't, like, I can't even
they
say
it exactly like that.
Yeah, I can't even say it because it's so sacrilegious to me.
Yes.
But, it is going to be a really rough time getting a lot of things up on their feet, especially without a lot of available community and state, local, and national support towards the arts in many countries. So trying to find options where it can focus on smaller venues like 99 venues, or focus on adapting works that are in the public domain that does save some money so that, actors can get paid and, the staffs of theater can get paid and stuff can kind of get going while they're still waiting for, tickets bought and butts and seats and stuff like that.
Yeah. So,
we're going to save the theater, all of us together.
Yes.
We'd love to hear your ideas. Please tweet at us.
Yes, you can tweet at us. You can leave comments on our YouTube archived version. You can come see us live if you're catching us on YouTube now. We do this every Wednesday and Saturday.
And now it's in front of a window. I bet we could do live performances, just like stand in our window.
Yeah.
And y'all can stand on the sidewalk. There's a little hill right in front of us.
Yes. So you can catch us live on Twitch and hop into the chat room and talk to us. Let's go out and save theater. Yeah. Let's do it.
And on that note, I don't think that there's any better note that we can end on. Let's save theater, y'all.
Yeah, let's save theater.
Let's save theater, y'all.
All right. Well, we love you guys. Thanks for tuning in and spending this time with us. Bristol, we see you in the chat room. It's always wonderful to see you joining us. Take care of yourself. Wear your mask. Social distancing. Stay healthy. Stay safe. Stay sane. Make good art. And take care of yourself because, we're not there to take care of you. All right?
Bye from Lola.
Bye, guys. Yes, Lola has run away, but she loves you guys too. So, all right. Bye, everyone.